Hello, Dr. Bin Song on Ruism at Paul Art Center, Boston. Today, the major topic of our conversation is the concept of Ren, Humaneness, in Ruist ethics. So the first question is still about the translation. Right now, there are multiple current translations for the character Ren. For example, benevolence, charity, goodness, humanity, humanness, etc. Among all these translations, I prefer humanness. Why? There are two major facets for the Ruist concept of Ren. The basic meaning of Ren is universal love. And this universal human love is thought of by major Ruist texts as representing the essence of human species. For example, in the text of Zhongyong, one of four major canonical books in Ruism, it says the virtue of humaneness is what human beings are all about. 仁者，人也. And if we translate this verse more literally, it can be read as humane is humanity, or humanity ought to be human. So the virtue of humaneness means universal human love. It is thought of by Ruism as representing the essence of human species. These two major meanings of the concept of Ren can be well translated by the English word humaneness. And this is the major reason why I prefer this translation. So the next question is the basic meaning is universal human love. Basic meaning of the concept of Ren is universal human love. So the question is how universal this Ruist concept of love could be. According to Mencius, there's a famous narrative in Ruist ethics. Mencius thought, when people say a baby about to fall into a well, people will spontaneously have the feeling of alarm and commiseration, regardless of what race, ethnicity, social status, vocation these people have. So for Mencius, this intrinsic and spontaneous feeling of commiseration with a falling baby is the root of the virtue of humaneness. And along the same logic, Wang Yangming, another major philosopher in Ming Dynasty, he has a very famous teaching on the universal aspects of the Ruist virtue of humaneness. So I will read this Wang Yangming's teaching. I try to illustrate how universal the Ruist concept of Ren, love, could be. Wang Yangming says, a person of humaneness regards heaven and earth and the myriad things as one body. He regards the world as one family and the country as one person. Therefore, when he sees a child about to fall into a well, he cannot help a feeling of alarm and commiseration. This shows that his humaneness forms one body with the child. Again, when he observes the pitiful cries and the frightened appearance of birds and animals about to be slaughtered, he cannot bear their suffering. This shows that his humaneness forms one body with birds and animals. But when he sees plants broken and destroyed, he cannot help a feeling of pity. This shows that his humaneness forms one body with plants. Yet even when he sees the towns and the stones shattered and crushed, he cannot help a feeling of regret. This shows that his humaneness forms one body with towns and stones. So in this quote, Wang Yangming thought a person with humaneness can universally love anything and everything in the universe, including human fellows, sentient beings, living beings, even inorganic beings like stone and tiles, right? So the Ruist concept of Ren, the universal as love, is just so universal, so all-encompassing, refers to anything and everything in the universe. So next question is, what is the peculiarity of Ruism on his teaching of universal love? Because we know there's many traditions in the world, like Christianity. They also teach the concept of universal love. Christianity has the concept of agape, right? And Buddhism has their concept of compassion. So compared to these traditions, what is the peculiarity of Ruism on the teaching of universal love? There's three major features. The first one is there's a universalist system of virtue ethics in Ruism, which passes out the concrete implication of the virtue of humaneness. So what does this mean? That means as long as you want to practice the virtue of humaneness, there are some minor backing up virtues to facilitate, to complement your practice of the virtue of humaneness. For example, in order to be human, people cannot only need to be warm-hearted, to be a good person in your intrinsic feelings. People also need to act the correct and the appropriate way to act for Ruism is the virtue of ritual propriety. So Ren and Li, these two virtues, are usually mentioned together to say in order for a person to be human, we must have these two virtues simultaneously practiced. This is one perspective of the Ruist system of virtue ethics. From another perspective, in order to sufficiently, efficiently love people, we must also have wisdom. We must also have courage to know how to love people and to persistently love people, regardless of difficulties and distresses, right? So these three virtues, humaneness, wisdom, and courage, must be practiced together in order to universally love people. These three virtues is called Tandade, three penetrative virtues in the Ruist system of virtue ethics. From another perspective, the most influential Ruist system of virtue ethics is called the Five Constant Virtues. It is developed in Han Dynasty based on Mensa's view of four virtues. So the five constant virtues is called Ren Yi Li Zhi Xing. Ren, humaneness; Yi, righteousness; Li, ritual propriety; Zhi, wisdom; and Xing, trustworthiness. These different virtues speak to the different facets of the practice of the cardinal human virtue of Ren. This is the particularistic, this is the universal approach of the Ruist virtue ethics. The second feature is Ruist virtue ethics is not only universal, it is also particular. There's a particularist approach of Ruist virtue ethics, which tries to teach people to practice, to realize these universal virtues in concrete and particular human relationships and particular social situations. For example, there's a teaching called Five Cardinal Human Relationships, Wulun. It includes the relationship between husband and wife, between lord and subjects, between parents and children, between elder and younger siblings, and between friendships. Among these five cardinal human relationships, Ruism thinks three of them are the most important. Husband and wife, parents and children, lord and subject, they are called three bonds. Because there are these concrete particular human relationships, in order to implement the universal virtues into these concrete human relationships, there's a particularistic approach of Ruist virtue ethics called 10 righteousness, 十义. For example, in order to be a human parent, human father, this father needs to cultivate his virtue of parental kindness. 慈. In order to be a human son, the son needs to be filial, 孝. In order to be a human lord, human ruler, the ruler and the lord needs to cultivate his virtue of righteousness. In order to be a human subject or minister, the minister needs to cultivate the virtue of loyalty. So different virtues, they correspond to different roles and concrete human relationships in different situations. So in a word, compared to the other traditions, the peculiarity of Ruism on its teaching of universal love is a seamless combination of universalistic and particularistic approaches of virtue ethics. Today, since this is the first time we converse about the Ruism teaching on Ren, we have not enough time to delve into details about this magnificent system of virtue ethics. Actually, I would like to dedicate more time to correct and rectify two major misunderstandings among ordinary people, among public media, about the Ruist concept of humaneness. The first misunderstanding is some people say the virtue of humaneness is a relational and a collectivist. It is not a solitary virtue, which means that the Ru ethics always urges individuals to submit themselves to social conventions and collective interests. And in this sense, Ruism does not want strong individuals. Usually, this misunderstanding is often presented together with the Chinese character Ren. The Chinese character Ren has two radicals. For the left part, it means person. The right part means two. So two persons. That means the virtue of humaneness must always be implemented in human relationships, and therefore the virtue of Ren, of humaneness, is relational and collectivist. It's not a solitary virtue, and Ruism does not want strong individuals. Do remember, this understanding is patently wrong, and I will tell you why this is a terrible misunderstanding. The truth is that Ruism wants and cultivates strong individuals. We must differentiate two kinds of relationships between individuals and the social group that individual belongs to. This relationship could either be submissive or managerial. If the individual obeys the interests of social group without any independence, the relationship between individual and the social group is submissive. However, if an individual positions oneself in the network of a social group and thus tries to cultivate oneself to the strongest term in order to harmonize various interests of other individuals in the same social group, and then to realize the greatest benefit, the greatest interest of that group, this relationship between individual and the social group is managerial. That means since human individuals always live in relationship, why not we consider ourselves as a manager of human relationships? One crucial difference between managerial and submissive relationship between individual and social group is this. The managerial relationship requires individuals to confront and rectify wrong behaviors of human fellows, regardless of their social status. If these behaviors are thought of as bringing harm to that social group, right? If the relationship is submissive, you just be blind to any wrong behavior of human fellows. But if the relationship is managerial, you try to manage well the relationship between you and the social group. If there's something wrong happens, you must stand up to confront it, to rectify it, right? Clearly, Ruism urges a managerial rather than a submissive relationship between human individuals and social groups. In order to be a good manager of human relationships, human needs to be an individual as strong as possible. So in the script, I give some examples, some quotes from the major Ruist text, try to confirm my point. So friends can read these scripts and try to understand why the Ruism teaching on the relationship between individual and the social group is managerial rather than submission. In this sense, it implies that the virtue of humaneness is also a solitary virtue, which means that a person needs to treat oneself well and discipline oneself well, even when he or she is alone. In Ruism, this is called the virtue of vigilant solitude, 慎独. So this is the first misunderstanding we must rectify in order to correctly understand the Ruism teaching on the virtue of humaneness. The second misunderstanding is as such. Some people say the virtue of humaneness is totally and utterly human. There's nothing beyond human. So that means there's no spiritual dimension of it. This is also a very bad misunderstanding. From the quote above of Wang Yangmi, we know that the Ruists understand the virtue of humanity is endowed by the changing and transforming natural powers of the universe. In Ruist understanding, since the universe is constantly created in an all-encompassing way, so human species also essentially and intrinsically love each other. What is cosmic and what is human maintains a great continuity in Ruism ethics, and in this sense, Ruist ethics is deeply spiritual. So let me use one classical metaphor from Song and Ming Ruism to illustrate this spiritual dimension of the cardinal human virtue of Ren. In Chinese, Ren can mean a kernel of a nut, representing the essential vital energy of a living being. Right? A nut is a plant, right? It's a living being. And the essence of the vital energy of this living being is essentialized, is manifested in the kernel. So metaphorically, Chen Hao and Chen Yi, two very important Ruist philosophers in Song Dynasty, they think universal human love, Ren, can also be thought of as the essence, as the kernel of human species. In this sense, all living beings in the cosmos strive for life and growth, right? So therefore, human species also strive for life and growth together in human society. This unimpeded intrinsic vital energy for human species to co-thrive in a human society, continuous with nature, is the essence of human beings. Right? Therefore, if we read book after book in Ruism, we find its teaching is actually highly spiritual. To find the cosmic foundation of human species, of human ethics, is actually one consistent theme running through Ruism in all its historical periods, which makes the Ru tradition not only ethical and political, but deeply spiritual. This also means that though not a religion proper, so the religion is a Western term, we cannot use it undifferentiatedly to Ruism. So that means though not a religion proper, Ruism can be taken as a personal faith to organize virtually all the important facets of human life. And in this sense, Ruism can also be comparatively studied with any other world cultural, spiritual, or religious traditions at an equal footing. So to understand Ruism, it's not only ethical, but political, but also a spiritual tradition. It is very important for us to understand the feature of Ruism. Okay, this is our major content today, and thanks for Art Center again to provide this space, and I look forward to further conversation on the major concept of Ruism in the future. So thank you. Bye-bye.